You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own, you know what you know, and you are the one who'll decide where you go. Welcome to the depths. Hello, welcome or welcome back to Reading from the Depths. My name is Lect, and thank you for joining me today. Today, I have a book tag for you. This is a brand new book tag that was invented by Gareth at Book Songs and Other Magic, and I think it's a delightful tag. He started this tag in celebration of his love for Dr. Seuss, but also he has a year of travel coming up. So the whole tag is based around the Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go. And what I love about it is it's not just asking for books that you like, but every prompt has a bookish question and a personal question. Thank you, Gareth, for tagging me. I think this is a great prompt. I'm really excited for it. I will link to his original video down in my description box. And now to start his video, before he began the prompts, he just talked about places he's visited, where he's gone, how he has traveled. So I'll start the same way. I have not traveled very much. You know, I'm from the Boston area. And so in the US, I've traveled throughout the US, but not very much. I'd say if you're considering places I've traveled and actually stayed, as opposed to just driven through, within the US, I'd say all of New England. So Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and then also New York, and then going down the East Coast a little bit. Let's see, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Virginia, Delaware. I've spent time in all those. Florida. If you go in the Midwest, Ohio and Illinois, up in Chicago, I've spent time in both those places, and then California. So not very much within the U.S. Outside of the U.S., I spent a few weeks in Ireland when I was in high school, doing a concert tour of Ireland. That was quite wonderful. And then other than that, I have only been to India and Sri Lanka and Singapore. So not very traveled at all. These days, it's hard to find time for it, you know? So I'll go through the prompts. Now, in his video, he listed out a longer quote for each of these prompts, but I don't remember those and I don't have the book in front of me. But he put shortened versions of the quote in his description box before the questions. So I'm just going to read the shortened versions of the prompts. And every quote has two different prompts, one kind of personal prompt or life prompt and one bookish prompt. So we're going to answer all of them. The first one, which direction you choose, is how the quote ends. And so the book prompt is, what is the first place that you go to in a bookstore? So generally the first place I'm going to go to in a bookstore is if they have a staff recommendations section where the staff picks out books that they want to highlight. Especially in indie bookstores, there'll often be like a card even that says why they chose that book. So every staff member not only chooses a book, but explains why they chose it. So that's my favorite place to go. And then after there, obviously horror. And then from horror, I, play in all the genre spaces first, and then I'll loop the whole store. So first, staff recommendations, then the horror genre, and then I spread out from there. Life prompt. What is the biggest life decision you've made that has impacted your life? Well, that's an easy one. Obviously, after grad school, deciding to become a monk and to not only become a monk, but to move to India, to move to Serja Monastery, and to continue furthering my studies with this 25-year study program that would help me not only deepen my practice and my study, but also allow me to teach in a more profound, deeper way to be of more benefit to others. So that is obviously the biggest decision I have made that has impacted my life. And I will say, looking at the rest of these questions, I'm not going to answer any of the rest of them with being a monk or being Buddhist, because that would kind of overtake a lot of my answers. So I'm going to save it only for this one. Okay, moving on, number 2. Too smart to go down any not so good street. That's the quote. And so the book prompt. What did you used to read that you don't read anymore? I can't think of anything, actually. If anything, the more I've read, my tastes have expanded. I read more genres and I read more diversely now than I've ever read before in my life. When I was younger, I had a much narrower scope of what I enjoyed reading. And over the last few decades, but especially over the last maybe 5 years, it's really blossomed out to be much wider. So I think there's nothing that I used to read that I don't read now. In fact, it's the opposite. And then the life prompt for the second one. What have you learned, either as a hobby or in education, that you valued the most? So again, not talking about Buddhism. I think what I have learned that value the most is one of my undergraduate degrees is in theater, and I did technical theater mostly. For the artistic side, I did lighting design, which I really, really enjoyed. But away from the artistic side of things, behind the scenes, I was mostly a stage manager. That's what I enjoyed doing the most. Technically, I was a theater electrician, but I did everything, and that's the way it was at my university. I trained in stage managing, but I did a little bit of everything. So anything that happens behind the scenes of a theater I could do, but stage managing was my heart. And what stage managing teaches you is it teaches you how to see all the different moving pieces that need to come together to make something happen. It teaches you how to delegate tasks, how to build a team, how to lead a team, and how to make sure all these different moving parts come together just the right ways at just the right time. And when they don't come together, when things go wrong, how to fix it quickly and efficiently, and in a way that the audience never knows that things went wrong. So being a stage manager trains you to do all those things, which are skills that I have found incredibly helpful throughout my whole life. So my training in theater and my training in technical theater and in being a stage manager has really been some of the best training that I've applied to almost everything I do. I remember when I was in grad school, I worked for a year as a hospital chaplain. And when I was applying to become a hospital chaplain, an intern, I should say, a hospital chaplain intern. When I was applying to that program, I was meeting with the head of the chaplaincy department, and she was asking about my past training, my undergrad training, and why I thought I would be a good chaplain. And I talked so much about being trained as a stage manager and how that would be helpful to me. And at one point, she interrupted me and she said, "What about your degree in religion? Would that be any help to you?" And I kind of had to say, not really. An academic degree in religion doesn't really teach you how to help people in any meaningful way. It teaches you how to study texts and how to study religions. But my degree in theater gave me practical skills. So stage managing and learning how to be a stage manager and training in that, I think, is the hobby slash education I received that I have found most valuable in every aspect of my life. Okay, moving on. You'll be seeing great sights. That is the next prompt. So the book prompt. Pick a book with an attractive cover. So I will pick a few, just what I have at hand. The first one I'm going to pick is the whole Tyrant Philosopher series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I think these covers are just gorgeous. The first one, City of Last Chances. And then you can see the second one, House of Open Wounds. It's the same style, but a little bit different color tone. And then the last one, Days of Shattered Faith. They all have the same styling, and they're very monochromatic with just one pop of color being red, orange, and yellow or gold across them. And then there's so many really wonderful illustrations that in the corners of the front and also the rear, there are just these small little illustrations that have to do with different key points or key characters in the plot, which are just little like Easter eggs on the cover. So I think these are really gorgeous. The only thing I have to say is they have this metallic cover to them. And, the first one has a gold color. This one has silver, and the last one also has gold / bronze. And that metallic kind of wears off. I don't know if you can see, but that metallic wears off depending on how you handle the book. So that is a little bit of a bummer, but that's the first one I'll pick. And then a few that are a little simpler. I think this is a really great cover. This is Mother Night by Kurt Vonnegut. This printing of it, I think it's just really, really simple, and it's really bold. And considering the themes of Mother Night, I think Mother Night is one of my favorite Vonnegut stories and kind of more relevant now than ever. And I just think the way patriotism is sold to us and how we need to be aware of how we engage in the world and what we are supporting through our speech, through our actions, through our ideas. And I think this is kind of that red, white, and blue typewriter does a great job of demonstrating that in a really simple way. I just received these anthologies yesterday. These are from the Library of America. And these are two anthologies of science fiction by women called The Future is Female. The first volume is from the pulp pioneers through Ursula K. Le Guin, and the second volume is the 1970s. And I just think these are like really graphic covers, and they are really, really great. They throw back to the pulp classics, and yet they also stand out in a really wonderful way. And then lastly, another really simple cover that I think is just striking is for Dead Astronauts by Jeff Vandermeer. So Jeff Vandermeer's series, the Born series, the first book is Born, the second book is Dead Astronauts. Though they're not really a sequel, it's more of a parallel storyline. And I just think this cover is both trippy and evocative at the same time, and also really simple. So those are covers that I find beautiful. And the life prompt is, what is the most beautiful place that you have visited? I would have to say, for me, it is going to be Muntawang, which is a district up in Arunachal Pradesh, which is in northeast India. That the monks that I live with in my particular house, I live with about 30 monks, and they're all from Mungtawang, which is on the border of Tibet. And it's up high in the mountains, and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. But you are up in the mountains, many of which are snow-covered, and it's just really, really beautiful scenery. So I had a great time. I visited there twice, and I think it's beautiful. Second from that, I would say Ladakh is very similar. So up in the mountains, where the vistas are quite expansive and wide open. Next quote, you'll be best of the best. Book prompt. What do you feel confident that you know a lot about with regard to books? I don't really think I know a lot about a whole lot. I could say horror, especially contemporary horror, but every time I think I know a lot about contemporary horror, I hear other people talk about it and I realize how little I know. If I were to focus more, I'd say Stephen King. I've read everything by Stephen King, many of them more than once, and I really enjoy them. I enjoy talking about them. But then I listen to some people talk about Stephen King, and I'm just blown away by how little I know about Stephen King and his work. So I don't think I have a good answer for it. If I had to say, I'd say Stephen King and Stephen King's bibliography. But there are so many people that know so much more than me, and I really love getting a chance to listen to them and hear from them and learn more. So I don't really know a whole lot about anything. If I had to pick something, I'd pick that. Life prompt. What would be your specialist subject on Mastermind? Yeah, same thing. I would lose Mastermind. I know a little bit about a lot of different things. Again, outside of Buddhism and Buddhist philosophy, I'm not really a specialist in many things. There are a lot of things, especially pop culture related things, that I could tell you a lot about. Now that I've been living kind of outside of the world of mainstream pop culture for over a decade and a half, I'm much more disconnected than I was. But in general, I know a lot about very small subjects that are weird and idiosyncratic and random, like ephemera. So I don't really think I have any specialist knowledge on anything important in life other than Buddhist philosophy, which I guess is most important, but is not exactly a topic that's going to come up on Mastermind. So yeah, both of these questions, I'm not confident that I know a lot about anything, whether it be a book or anything in life in general. Moving on, except when you don't. Book prompt. What kind of books do you feel that you don't relate to? I suppose what I relate to least, as far as genre goes, the stories that I find least appealing are romance, pure romance, and any sort of military story or war story. I don't mind when either of those things are incorporated into other genres and they're incorporated into storylines, but when that's the focus of a story, I have a hard time with it. Though I do try to find something relatable in any story I pick up, any novel I pick up. But in general, obviously, I'm living a life of a celibate monk. So reading about stories where the whole point is romance and they follow tropes that just seem like tired and bored and like not aware of how much they are participating in this kind of patriarchal system of like this cishet normative, like really boring understanding of what it means to be in an important relationship with someone, it doesn't do a whole lot for me. It does not really interest me and I feel very disconnected from it. So in general, romance and anything that is specifically war related or military related. I don't mind violence. Obviously, I read a lot of horror. There's a lot of violence in the stories I read, but I just find something about the tedium of war and of military stories that don't grip me. Life prompt. What is something that you've stopped doing or you've given up on? I'm not sure how much really judgment or like wistfulness is included in this prompt. When you say given up on something, that really seems like there's a lot of judgment involved in that phrase. So I'm not really sure that aspect of it, the emotional aspect, but just practically something that I don't do anymore is when I was younger, I was singing in a professional men and boys choir. I started when I was 8 or 9 years old, and I did that all the way through college. And I sang in numerous choirs and choral groups. And then in high school, I also started playing saxophone, not really by my choice, but before one summer break, the band leader gave me a tenor saxophone and said that I was in the band and the jazz band next year, so I had to learn how to play it. So I played tenor sax and I sang. And now as a monk, I have given up engaging in frivolities, so dance and music and things that are only for the purpose of mindlessness is something that you take a vow against, which isn't to say there's no singing or dancing or music, but it's to say that you don't do those things for the purposes of riling up any negative emotions such as attachment or such as mindlessness in general. But aside from that, even if I didn't have a vow against it, I just don't have time right now. So I haven't played saxophone in decades. I have my saxophone with me here in India. At some point I brought it, but it's just hanging out. A while ago I took it out to see if I remembered how to play just a basic scale. I could play a chromatic scale. So I more or less remembered all the fingering, but it was rough. And so that's something I have, I guess, given up. And it would be great if I could pick it up again, but I don't know. I don't see it happening anytime soon. Now, next, this isn't a quote. This is just the phrase, the waiting place. So the book prompt. Name a book you're excited to read that's on your TBR. I have a few for this. The first two aren't released yet, but they're two of my most anticipated reads of 2025. They're from authors that I really like. The first one is by Andrew Joseph White. So Andrew Joseph White is a contemporary horror author, and he's published 3 novels, all of which are categorized as YA. He's publishing his first adult novel this year. It is called You Weren't Meant to Be Human, and the tagline says Alien meets Midsummer, which right away is pretty awesome. The blurb says, festering masses of worms and flies have taken root in dark corners across Appalachia. In exchange for unwavering loyalty and fresh corpses, these hives offer a few struggling humans salvation, a fresh start, and it's an offer that none refuse. You Weren't Meant to Be Human is a deeply personal horror, a visceral statement about the lives of marginalized people in a hostile world, echoing the works of Stephen Graham Jones and Eric LaRocca. So that sounds great. Anything Andrew Joseph White writes, I'm down for reading. The other one that isn't published yet that I'm excited for is by C.G. Drews, who wrote Don't Let the Forest In. That was their debut that came out last year, which I thought was phenomenal. That is another YA horror / folk / gothic novel. And I thought that was really moving, like really, really emotional and gripping. Like literally tore your heart out. And they have a new story coming out called Hazelthorn. And this is being marketed as a deeply unsettling yet hauntingly beautiful tale of murder and botanical body horror, perfect for fans of Andrew Joseph White and We Have Always Lived in the Castle. So it sounds like body horror meets Shirley Jackson. So I'm down for it. So those are the two books that have not been released yet that are my most anticipated reads of 2025. Though a few other things on my TBR list that I'm really excited about. Actually, they're mostly sci-fi now that I come to look at the books I have piled around me. But these are all series I intend to read this year. We'll see if I get through it. But Becky Chambers' Wayfarer series, I'm really excited to read these. I've been meaning to read them for a long time. Haven't gotten to them. They're on the list. Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Time series. These are also on the list. I know I'm going to be buddy reading the first one very soon with a friend. So hopefully that'll get that series going. The Hyperion series by Dan Simmons. I am starting Hyperion this month at the end of February. At least that's my goal. So hopefully that series will happen soon as well. And then two other series that I am really anticipating is the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I'm really, really hoping to do this series this year. I've heard a lot of great things about it, and I can't wait to start. And then lastly, the Basslock trilogy by China Millville that starts with Perdido Street Station. So these three. China Millville and with Perdido Street Station is kind of the birth of the new weird as a genre, that combination of speculative sci-fi / steampunk that has kind of become its own genre. So those are the series that I'm really hoping to read this year. Those are all on my TBR. I'm pretty confident I'm going to get through all of them. It's a sci-fi heavy list, but that's okay. I'm fine with it. And then life prompt for this question is, what in general are you looking forward to the most this year? Wow, that's a big question. Last year I kind of took a year off from teaching a lot. The year before, whenever I was requested to give teaching, so spiritual teaching or spiritual advice, I didn't say no to any of them. I felt like I had to say yes to everything. And that had me traveling all around India. And it had me teaching in a couple different centers in America and a couple different centers across India. And it was a little bit exhausting. And so last year, I said no to all other requests because I knew I just couldn't balance that much travel with my studies at the monastery. So the only place I taught last year was at the one center that is close to me, or about 6 hours away in Bangalore, which is the center that I'm the resident teacher at. And so that is the only place that I gave regular teachings. And this year I haven't made a firm commitment one way or the other, but I'm hoping to be more relaxed. The topic that I'm studying at the monastery this year is a little more relaxed. It's an important topic, but it's something we've already studied a little bit. So this year is not something brand new, but instead deepening into something we've already spent 2 years studying. So I'm hoping to be a little more relaxed at the monastery. And so being a little more relaxed in that way, I'm hoping can allow me to focus on other things, including my teaching schedule and including my translation schedule and just the other extracurricular study and practice and meditation that I do outside of what is required for the monastery, or for the academic program at the monastery, I should say. So that's it. Nothing else. I don't have anything really big or exciting on my list. I often go back to the States to visit family, and I might go back later this year. If I do go back, I usually go back around February. That's when the monastery has a holiday, February, March, around Losar, the Tibetan New Year. But this year, I'm not going to go back at that time because since my mother passed away last year, then their remaining family members are all working or in school. So it's not a great time to go back. So I think I'm going to go back in the summer, which will be nice. There was discussion of like a family vacation with my brother and my sister taking a vacation together and maybe me joining them. So I'm hoping for that. But we'll see if it happens. Don't hold on too tight to anything. Just let things happen as they come. And then the last prompt, balancing act. Talk about balancing your time between general life and putting out content on BookTube. I see what you did there, Gareth. You combined the book prompt and the life prompt. Very sneaky. Yeah, I'm still working on it. Making videos is a little bit exhausting, actually. I'm not great at it, and it still feels unnatural. It still feels very performative. So I'm trying to be more comfortable and find that line between being comfortable and relaxed, but also appropriate for living life as a monk. And that's a balance that's hard to do when I'm only looking at a camera and I don't have any real human feedback on the other side. And on top of that, no matter how comfortable I get, there's still a lot of editing that has to happen because I make so many verbal flubs and so many mistakes that for every 10 minutes I spend recording, I spend 20 minutes editing at least. If it were just reading and then talking about books occasionally and watching others' videos and commenting on them, then that's an easy thing to balance. But making videos, man, some people are good at it. Some just turn on the camera and they record and they go, and I envy them because I can't do that. So I don't really have a good way to balance it right now, except that I know what my priorities are. And as soon as doing all this booktube stuff feels like work and it doesn't feel like something I enjoy doing, then I'm going to cut back on it. And if it were to intrude on my study, my practice, my teaching, anything else that I'm doing, then I'll cut back on it because I just have to have priorities. Right now, it's not intruding on any of those things. It doesn't feel like work. It hasn't changed the way I read, but it doesn't feel balanced. So, work in progress. What else to do? And that's it. That is all of the prompts. I will tag some people. I don't know who yet. I have to see who Gareth tagged, and I'll tag a bunch of others, and I'll list them down in the description. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was entertaining. I hope that you can do this tag. I think this is a great tag. I really like tags that are more than just listing off books that you find interesting. So I hope you pick this up. I hope you run with it. And I look forward to seeing what you have to say, either down in the comments or in your own video. But for now, I'll say thank you for spending some time with me today. I appreciate you. Please be kind to yourselves, take care of each other, and go slowly.